Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, of course, I'm delighted to participate once again in this forum of the emerging markets in this venerable institution, the Banque de France. I've visited the Banque de France on several occasions with former governors, of whom Michel Candesu, my boss, my brother, Jacques de la Rosière, of course, François Villeroy de Gallo. So I'd like to thank the Bank of France for hosting us here. And as everyone knows, Michel is not only my friend, but he's my big brother. C'est un Ivoirien pur jus. Voilà. And it's thanks to Michel I went to the IMF. Thanks to Michel I became later on director of the African department. Thanks to him that I was privileged to be a counselor with Frankel. Where is Frankel? Jacob. Jacob here. We were together as counselors of Michel Candesu, and thereafter as second deputy managing director. So I said, everything Michel asked me, I have to do it. I'm so grateful to you, Michel and Brigitte. I'd like also to thank my friend Jacob Frankel, former governor of the Bank of Israel. I think Enrique Iglesias is here. I haven't seen. Oh, here. How are you? Yes, who is the former president of the Inter-American Development Bank. And I understand we have also Sir Haruku Kuroda, but I don't have my glasses, so excuse me if I don't. Yes, okay. So it's becoming, in any case, I greet my fellow co-presidents of the forum, researchers, eminent leaders, and all of you friends who have taken time to come for this forum. And of course, I'd like to congratulate also the 20 world-class authors for the launch of their new book, Envisioning 2060, Opportunities and Risk for Emerging Markets, a book which is bound, of course, to become a reference for all. I liked very much the chapter on the future prospect of Africa. And I noted that several recommendations have been implemented in Côte d'Ivoire. And so I'd like to congratulate our Secretary General, the young man sitting here, who is my boss at the presidency. He's the man who runs the presidency, together with the Prime Minister, Patrick Achi. And I'm 80 years old. He's 40 years old, half my age. Brilliant young man. Abdou, thank you. In connection with, of course, the Finance Minister. Where is Finance Minister and Planning Minister Kabanyale? Ah, yes. See, I should have taken my glasses. I'm so sorry. So all of them came to participate in this important forum. Obviously, Sub-Saharan Africa has experienced very bad times since 2020. The economic growth was negative, minus 1.7% in 2021. While initially the African Development Bank had programmed it to be 3.6%. And of course, this affected millions of people who joined the rank of people living below the poverty line. The COVID crisis was the beginning of this problem. It created the vulnerability of the globalized world, but more so the African countries because of the disruptions in supply of essential goods such as masks and vaccines. And let me say on this that really the developed countries at the beginning were very selfish. They just took care of their population, produced and provided them with vaccine, with masks. And obviously, we poor Africans had nothing to do. We could not produce them. There were not enough masks. And this, fortunately, God always balanced things. He gave us a lot of sunshine, a lot of heat, and that killed the virus. So the development of virus was very low in Africa. And also because many children, many people like myself, were born in the 30s or in the 40s, because of malaria. We used to have vaccine or pills of Nivaquine. And Nivaquine was quite helpful in countering this. So that in Côte d'Ivoire, for example, since I think December 2019 up to yesterday, for a population of 28 million people, we had only 799 people who died of COVID. Of course, it's 799 too many people, but when I see in many countries in Europe, the daily toll was 1,000, 2,000. I think in the US, it's even, the total was more than 1 million. So we have 799 cases of COVID who passed away. And at the same time, we also, as of yesterday, Sunday, the number of people remaining with COVID was about 20, if I'm not mistaken, Abdul. It was 10 or 20. And only 2 people were in hospital because of COVID. This shows how much the temperature helped us, but also we were able, thanks to the COVAX system, to import a lot of vaccine, and we produce a lot of masks, and clearly we got the COVID under control by these decisions. And I should say that the best really thing which happened is the discipline of the Ivorian people, because we had set up a package of measures, and which was very difficult at the beginning, since the COVID came through Abidjan at the international airport. We decided to isolate Abidjan from the rest of the country. And this lasted about 6 months. People were not happy, but fortunately we accepted this. And as a result, as of even today, 95 of the cases of COVID are in Abidjan. Abidjan is about 6 million people, so we were able to treat the problem in Abidjan. And as a result, of course, this has allowed us to control efficiently the problem of COVID. And I must say that we also had set up a package of measures, about 5% of GDP, of expenditures in paying people of the army, the system of health, the gendarmerie, the police, and so forth, to help in this process. Of course, all this costs a lot of money, but we were able to devote 5% of GDP to the fighting the pandemic. And as a result, as I said, the result is what I just described to you. So as of today, We think clearly we have the system under control. We almost have no case of COVID outside of Abidjan. And I said, as of yesterday, we had only 19 cases in Abidjan, of which 2 are in the hospital, but they're minor cases. It's Omicron. But we're continuing to vaccinate people. And I understand 50% of the people have been, about 14 million have been vaccinated first dose, and about 1/3 second dose of vaccine. So which shows that Côte d'Ivoire is very much ahead of most of the countries in Africa, but of course much below Europe and the US. Because of all these measures, the economic slowdown was not severe. In 2020, we had a growth rate of 2%, and last year, 7%. And according to the IMF, Côte d'Ivoire should remain among the fastest growing economies this year and next year, and I hope in the medium term. So clearly, COVID was a major problem for the world, for Africa in particular, and I'm glad that in Côte d'Ivoire we were able to contain the damages of COVID. I agree with the recommendation made in the book Envisioning 2060 that sub-Saharan African countries must continue to improve the efficiency of their health system and provide quality health services for all. And this is really what we are doing, and it's going quite well. And I'm pleased to say that we have opened, rehabilitated the health centers in all the 31 provinces of the country. We have rehabilitated the existing hospitals in Abidjan. And my wife, the First Lady, through her foundation, built an hôpital mère enfant for women and children, which is working very well, and where 1/4 of the patients are from poor families and who don't pay anything when they go to the hôpital mère enfant of Dominique Ouattara. So this is clearly health is the basis for progress, and we consider that we're doing much on this. My only regret, and I've told the Prime Minister, is that our infancy, le taux de, comment on dit ça en anglais, taux de mortalité infantile. Infant mortality is still above average in Côte d'Ivoire, which means that the system is not working as we'd like, and also that probably the quality of services is not as good as we'd like. So we're putting a lot of emphasis on this. Otherwise, in terms of infrastructure, I think we have done what we should do, and I agree fully with recommendations of authors. Now, of course, with COVID, we also had this problem of Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine by the Federation of Russia, and all the consequences for the world, and particularly for Africa. And the problem is quite severe for what people call the 4F, the food, the fuel, the fertilizer, and the finance of the world. And Africa is suffering on all these matters. Obviously, Côte d'Ivoire, we're lucky to be an agricultural country. We're nearly self-sufficient in agricultural products, consumer products, and apart from rice and wheat, but we're making more efforts on those. But this has led many countries, including Côte d'Ivoire, to impose restrictions on exports to neighboring countries. Côte d'Ivoire, as you're aware, is the first world producer of cocoa, the first world producer of cashew nuts, the first producer of rubber, first African producer of bananas, first African producer, I think, of palm oil and pineapples and so forth. But on rice, we are deficient, and our wheat is imported mostly from France. So obviously, we have approached the French officials to try to help us in making sure that we don't get a supply problem with the production of wheat, since people are used to eating bread. And we have also encouraged our people to the factories to try to use banana, plantain, yams, cassava, to mix that with wheat in making bread. So we will be able to import less wheat, given the shortage of wheat production with the war in Ukraine. And on fuel, Côte d'Ivoire produces a bit of oil and gas, and but by April next year, we will have the production of a lot of gas by the Italian company Eni, which will help us to be nearly self-sufficient in the next few years, both in oil and in gas. And in fact, we'll be a net exporter, I hope, by 2026. Of course, in fertilizers, we have Nigeria is a big producer of fertilizers, and we're in contact with Nigeria to try to get fertilizer at a reasonable price. So the main problem for all of us is the financial system and the financing of all these difficulties, both with COVID and the situation in Ukraine. I noted that in 2021, countries like the US, the UK, Italy, Japan had very large deficits, more than 9%. Even France had, and the UK had more deficits of more than 8% of GDP. And I met with the managing director, Madame Georgieva, on several occasions to tell her that limiting the deficit in the countries of West Africa, of UMOA, the deputy governor is here, limiting the deficits, total deficit to 5 or 6%, while we were at 3-4%, was not fair, because clearly we also needed to provide more spending in the social sectors. And on top of that, we have a problem of facing terrorist attacks in many of our countries. For example, this year's budget, we increased the spending for the Defense Department because of terrorist fights by 1.5% of GDP, because we have the problem of fragility on the northern part of our country, because of Burkina Faso and Mali have led us to try to reinforce those areas by recruiting more soldiers, building barracks and buying material, buying arms and the like. And thanks to that, for the past 12 months, Côte d'Ivoire has had no attacks because we have soldiers posted along the border and ready to intervene when necessary. This has not been the case in all the neighboring countries because of deterioration of the security situation in Burkina and Mali. So clearly, there is a fair reason to ask for larger spending in our countries. And I'd like to emphasize this and help you, who are so influential, to continue to encourage the IMF to do more in this area, obviously, I'd like to also congratulate Madame Georgieva for having been able to make a new allocation of SDRs. This has helped us a lot, most of our countries, and this equivalent of $650 billion to fight the pandemic. And of course, sub-Saharan Africa has received only 33 billion, and this is clearly insufficient. And I remember last year, we were here at the invitation of the President of France to try to increase this amount from 33 to 100 billion by contribution of countries which have excess reserves to put the amount to 100 billion so that the sub-Saharan African countries can have more use of SDRs in trying to finance their economies. So clearly these are paths which I'd like to stress. This is quite important. But the major problem we have now, Côte d'Ivoire has gone to the Eurobond market over the past couple of years for a long time, but we were very proud to say that last year we were able to borrow $1 billion equivalent in euro, I think dollars and euro, at 5%, which was quite a good rate compared to most African countries, including North Africa and South Africa. But with this situation, obviously, the Eurobond market will react to the long-term bond market, and therefore we are concerned that the conditions for borrowing would be very, very difficult for our countries. And so far this year we have not gone outside of the domestic and regional markets. We have limited our borrowing to those because the international market, of course, the Eurobond market is becoming quite expensive. So the allocation of the SDRs to get the resilience and sustainability trust is quite necessary. This would allow us to borrow more from the IMF. And the Côte d'Ivoire also chaired last June last year, the IDA replenishment meeting, which also helped, I think, get a replenishment of 98 billion. So we also continue to encourage countries to do more in this area to help the developing countries. I'm saying all this just not to say that we need financing for financing. This has to go with appropriate macroeconomic policies, of course. And there I can tell you that Côte d'Ivoire has been quite remarkable for the past 10 years from 2012 till 2019. The country had growth rates of about an average annual growth rate of 8%, inflation of 3%, deficits of around, budget deficit of about 3% and the like. So we have well managed the economy, and we believe that's the key if you want to be supported by the private sector and by the international institutions. You have first to clean your house and to implement good policies. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to say that these are difficult trade-offs for all of us, policymakers, but I did not say much about the question of the climate, of energy, but this is clearly the transition. Energy transition is something which is necessary, and from 9th till 20th of May, there is the meeting of COP15 in Abidjan to talk about find solution to desertification and the waste of the problem of destruction of soil. And COP15 is going well. I talked to the Prime Minister yesterday. So we have a problem with deforestation because 80% of the forest of Côte d'Ivoire has been completely destroyed over the past 60, 70 years. And our aim is to get back to reduce that to 50% by 2030. So we have launched the Abidjan Legacy Program, which is a land restoration program worth 2.5 billion over the next few years, and we're confident that we'll get support from that. And this will allow Côte d'Ivoire not only to increase reforestation, but also to increase food production, create rural jobs for unemployed youth, and improve the well-being of rural women. Before I finish, I would like to say how important it is for the world to show more solidarity. Clearly, this is a theme which has not been stressed enough in our view. When we see the damage being done in Ukraine, obviously with the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and we see the mobilization. Of course, we're all very, very shocked by the number of deaths and people who are displaced. But I'm quite personally very pleased to see the world, the Western world mobilization for Ukraine and the support that the Ukrainians are getting to try to resist in this situation, and also to give them hope for the future. And this is something which is remarkable and which we certainly share. And we congratulate the G7 for their position on these matters. But as an African leader, I would say that I've been in office for 10 years. We have done the best we could, but we would have liked to have more solidarity from the West. We think that clearly, having worked in the international institutions, I continue to say, why is it that for Africa, every penny, it seems to be worth $1? A penny is not a penny is $1. For us to get a penny, it takes so much pain, so difficult policies to implement. So many travel to all the capitals, Paris Club, the former chair of Paris Club is here, my friend Michel. Why is it so difficult to help the poorest countries? That's part of the solidarity. And every time I met with the European Union, especially my good friend Angela Merkel, I used to say, and I congratulate her for what she done during the migration problem 3 years ago with the Syrians. She was very courageous because clearly if we had more support for Africa, I think many of the problems that are really at the core of the democracy in Europe, particularly I talk about Europe because we were closest, things would have probably find a solution. But the fact, so the mobilization for Ukraine is good, but my conclusion is that I really hope that after this crisis, or because of this crisis, there will be a stronger mobilization for Africa. Of course, provided the African governments also behave according to international rules of good governance, democracy, and fair distribution of revenues. Thank you very much.